By the end of this video, you will understand something that 99% of people never figure out. Why the most powerful people in history never asked for anything directly, never fought when they were outmatched, and never committed to anyone. These 12 laws, laws 13 through 24 of the 48 laws of power, are the social operating system that separates the players from the pawns, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Welcome back. If you caught part 1 of this series, you already know what Robert Greene is about. He is not here to preach morality. He is here to show you how the world actually works, the unspoken rules that govern every office, every relationship, every negotiation. In part 1, we covered laws 1 through 12, the foundations. We talked about never outshining your master, guarding your reputation, saying less than necessary, and using selective honesty as a weapon. Those laws were about survival, about protecting yourself in a world where power games are happening whether you play them or not. Now, in part 2, we go deeper. Laws 13 through 24 are about something more sophisticated, the art of social strategy. These are the laws that teach you how to read people, how to persuade without arguing, how to move through social circles like a master chess player. We are going to learn why the most powerful people never remind anyone of past favors, why the best spies do not sneak around in the shadows but smile and ask polite questions at dinner parties, why the smartest move is sometimes to surrender, and why the person who refuses to pick a side often ends up more powerful than anyone who did. So settle in. Over the next 41 minutes, we are going to walk through every one of these 12 laws, packed with stories from history, con artists and queens, emperors and courtesans that will change the way you see the world around you. Let us begin. Here is one of the most painful truths in this entire book, and it comes right at the start of part 2. Law 13. When asking for help, appeal to self-interest, never to mercy or gratitude. When you need help, when you truly desperately need someone to come through for you, your first instinct is to remind them of everything you have done. All the favors, all the late nights, all the times you showed up when nobody else did. And it makes sense, right? Gratitude should count for something. But Greene says that instinct will betray you almost every single time. Why? Because gratitude is a burden. Think about it. When someone reminds you of what they did for you, how does it really make you feel? Grateful or guilty? There is a difference, and guilt is one of the most corrosive emotions in human relationships. The person you are reminding does not feel warmth toward you. They feel the weight of an unpaid debt. And what do people do with debts they do not want to carry? They find a way to forget them. They rationalize. They convince themselves you were not really that helpful, or they simply avoid you. Greene illustrates this with a devastating story from 14th century Italy. Castruccio Castracani had risen from common soldier to lord of the powerful city of Lucca. He owed much of his ascent to one noble family, the Poggios. They had supported him, conspired with him, helped him seize control. But once in power, Castruccio's ambition outgrew his gratitude. He moved on, forgot the favors. When things got dangerous, when a rebellion brewed while Castruccio was away fighting, the eldest Poggio, Stefano, stepped in and brokered peace. He calmed both sides, prevented bloodshed. Then he went to Castruccio, expecting recognition for this service. He laid out the family's entire history of loyalty. He reminded the warlord of every good deed. He appealed to mercy, to justice, to basic human decency. Castruccio listened patiently. Then he smiled, promised that justice would prevail, and invited the entire Poggio family to the palace to discuss their grievances. That evening, every single one of them was imprisoned. Days later, they were all executed, including the good, peaceful, well-meaning Stefano. Now, was Castruccio a monster? Probably. But that is not Greene's point. The point is that Stefano made a catastrophic miscalculation. He assumed that reminding a powerful man of past debts would activate his sense of honor. Instead, it activated something very different: resentment. The more Stefano talked about what he was owed, the more Castruccio saw him as a living reminder of obligation. And powerful people do not like to feel obligated. So what should you do instead? Greene's answer is brutally simple. Appeal to self-interest. When you need something from someone, do not remind them of the past. Show them the future. Find something in your request that benefits them and emphasize it. Make them see how helping you also helps them. When a person sees a clear gain for themselves, they respond with enthusiasm rather than guilt. Greene contrasts the Poggio disaster with a brilliant example from ancient Athens. During a conflict between the city-states of Corcyra and Corinth, both sent ambassadors to Athens, each trying to win Athenian support. The Corinthian ambassador gave a passionate, emotional speech, reminding Athens of all the favors Corinth had done, all the past alliances, the bonds of friendship. The Corcyran ambassador took a completely different approach. He admitted openly that Corcyra had never helped Athens before. No emotional appeals, no guilt trips. Instead, he made a cold, practical argument. Corcyra had the second largest navy in Greece, and an alliance would create a combined naval force so powerful that no rival would dare challenge them. Athens voted overwhelmingly to ally with Corcyra. The Corinthian ambassador lost because he played on the past. The Corcyran won because he played on the future. Remember this law every time you need to ask for help. Nobody cares what you did for them yesterday. They care about what you can do for them tomorrow. Let us shift gears. You are at a dinner party. The conversation is light, people are relaxed, their guard is down. Someone is telling a story, and you are listening closely, not because the story is fascinating, but because buried in the details are clues about what this person fears, what they desire, what makes them tick. Welcome to Law 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. And no, Greene is not asking you to become James Bond. He is talking about something far more subtle and far more powerful, the art of gathering intelligence through social conversation. The great French diplomat Talleyrand was perhaps the finest practitioner of this art in history. His contemporaries described his conversation as marked by wit and grace, but also by a strange quality. He rarely talked about himself. He concealed his thoughts behind a transparent veil of charm. He would ask probing, indirect questions. He would appear to share a secret, something personal, something heartfelt, and this would prompt the other person to share something real in return. Think about that. By pretending to open up, Talleyrand made others actually open up. A false confession draws out a real one. Greene also describes the approach of the legendary art dealer Joseph Duveen. For years, Duveen's white whale was the industrialist Andrew Mellon, a stiff, taciturn man who had zero interest in meeting the flamboyant dealer, so Duveen did not approach him directly. Instead, he put several members of Mellon's household staff on his own payroll. Through them, he learned Mellon's tastes, habits, and preferences in extraordinary detail. When Duveen finally bumped into Mellon at a London hotel, having arranged his room directly below Mellon's and timed his entry into the elevator to the second, the conversation flowed effortlessly. They had remarkably similar taste, Mellon thought. How delightful. Of course, there was nothing accidental about it. Duveen had studied his mark so thoroughly that he could mirror his preferences perfectly. From that day forward, Mellon bought art only from Duveen. The practical takeaway here is not about being sneaky. It is about the power of listening. Most people are so desperate to talk about themselves that they never really study the person in front of them. They miss the clues. The offhand remark that reveals an insecurity, the way someone lights up when a certain topic comes up, the body language that contradicts the words. Train yourself to listen more than you speak. Suppress your own ego in conversation, let others do the talking, and absorb everything. You will be amazed at what people will tell you when they feel heard, and the intelligence you gather will give you a decisive edge in every interaction that follows. Law 15. Crush your enemy totally. This is probably the most controversial law in the entire book, and Greene does not flinch from it. The principle is stark. If you have a genuine enemy, someone who wishes you harm, who will stop at nothing to undermine you, half measures are worse than no measures at all. Wound them and they will recover. Show mercy and they will interpret it as weakness. Leave one ember burning and the whole house eventually catches fire. The story Greene uses to illustrate this goes back to ancient China, the legendary rivalry between two generals, Shang Yu and Liu Pang. They started as allies, fighting on the same side during the collapse of the old dynasty. Shang Yu was a fearsome warrior, large, powerful, impulsive. Liu Pang was a peasant, a drinker, a schemer, not much of a fighter, but cunning beyond measure. When both men competed for supremacy, Xiang Yu had Liu trapped, not once, but multiple times. Each time, he could have ended it. But something held him back. He respected Liu. He wanted to defeat him honorably in open battle, not through ambush or treachery. He wanted Liu to acknowledge his superiority, and each time he hesitated, Liu escaped. He used Xiang Yu's mercy as breathing room to regroup, rebuild, and come back stronger. Eventually, the tables turned. Liu's forces surrounded Xiang Yu's army, and when it was Liu's turn to show mercy, he did not hesitate. He destroyed Xiang Yu's army completely. The great warrior, alone and surrounded, cut his own throat rather than be captured. Liu Pang went on to become one of the greatest rulers in Chinese history. And it happened because he learned the lesson Xiang Yu never could. When the moment comes, do not let emotion cloud your judgment. Now, Greene is not telling you to literally crush people. In the modern world, we are talking about politics, business, social dynamics, but the principle holds. If someone has shown themselves to be an irreconcilable enemy, if reconciliation is truly impossible, then leaving them intact is the most dangerous thing you can do. Neutralize them completely. Remove their ability to retaliate. Because if you wound a viper and let it live, it will strike again. The reverse is equally important. If someone is not a true threat, do not make them one. Many people create enemies needlessly by overreacting. The law says crush your enemy totally, but only when they genuinely are your enemy. Misapply this law, and you will create the very threat you are trying to prevent. Here is a law that might surprise you. After spending the last few laws talking about action, gathering intelligence, winning through demonstration, crushing enemies, Greene now says sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is disappear. Law 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Think about it this way. The sun is the most powerful object in our sky. But do you appreciate it on a sunny Tuesday in July? Probably not. You appreciate it after a week of rain. It is absence that makes us truly value something. And this applies to people just as much as weather. Greene tells the remarkable story of Dionysus, a man in ancient Media who built a reputation as the fairest and most trustworthy judge in the land. People traveled from distant villages to have him settle their disputes. His fame grew and grew, until one day, at the height of his influence, Dionysus suddenly announced he was retiring. He was done. No more cases. Find someone else. The country immediately descended into chaos. Without their beloved arbiter, disputes escalated into violence. Crime spiked. Citizens who had taken his services for granted were now lost without him. After a month of this misery, representatives begged Dionysus to return, but this time, not as a judge, as their king, with absolute power. He had made them feel what life was like without him, and they gave him everything just to get him back. This is a principle that applies everywhere, in love, in business, in friendship. The person who is always available, always present, always accessible, becomes common. We take them for granted. Their value erodes through overexposure. But the person who knows when to step back, who creates strategic moments of scarcity, instantly becomes more valued, more desired, more respected. Now, there is a critical nuance here. This law only works after you have established your presence. If you disappear before anyone knows who you are not creating mystique, you are just forgotten. First, make yourself known, make yourself essential, and then, at the right moment, withdraw. The contrast between your presence and your absence is what generates the power. As the French courtesan Ninon de L'Enclos once put it, love never dies of starvation but often of indigestion. Too much of even a good thing makes it worthless. Learn when to leave, and your return will be treated like a resurrection. Humans are creatures of habit. We crave routine. We find comfort in knowing what to expect from the people around us, and their predictability gives us a sense of control over our environment. Now flip that around. What happens when someone is completely unpredictable? When you cannot anticipate their next move? It is terrifying. Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. The most famous chess match of the 20th century illustrates this perfectly. In 1972, the World Championship came down to American Bobby Fischer versus Russian Boris Spassky. Spassky was the reigning champion, methodical, patient, psychologically brilliant. He had beaten Fischer before by studying his patterns and exploiting them. But Fischer arrived in Reykjavik, Iceland, and immediately broke every pattern Spassky expected. He showed up late to the match, then almost did not show up at all. He complained about the lighting, the cameras, he even hated the chairs. He forfeited the second game entirely. He seemed erratic, possibly unhinged. Spassky did not know what to make of it. Was Fischer cracking under pressure? Was this some elaborate psychological ploy? Then, in Game 3, Fischer played with a ferocity no one had seen before. His eyes burned with intensity. He played moves that were not his style at all, approaches he had never used in any recorded game. Spassky started making mistakes. He began to cry after losing Game 6. By the end, he was convinced Fischer was hypnotizing him. He demanded the chairs be taken apart and examined for hidden devices. He accused Fischer of putting chemicals in the air. Fischer won the championship, and the key to his victory was not superior chess skill. Spassky was arguably his equal. It was that Fischer had completely scrambled his patterns, making himself impossible to read. Spassky's entire strategy depended on predicting Fischer's moves. When he could not, he unraveled. You do not have to be a chess grandmaster to use this principle. In everyday life, being predictable makes you boring and easy to manipulate. Occasionally doing something that does not match people's expectations, changing your approach, reacting differently than they anticipated, keeps them slightly off balance. They pay more attention to you. They cannot take you for granted, and they certainly cannot scheme against you when they do not know what you will do next. Predictability is the enemy of power. The moment everyone knows your next move, you have lost the initiative. Be deliberate about introducing surprise into your behavior, not recklessness, but strategic unpredictability. When we feel threatened, when enemies seem to be everywhere, our first instinct is to retreat, build walls, cut people off, huddle inside a fortress of our own making. Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous, and according to Greene, that instinct will get you killed. The first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huangdi, was one of the mightiest rulers in history. His empire was vaster than Alexander the Great's. But in the last years of his life, paranoia consumed him. He lived in a palace with 270 pavilions connected by secret underground passages. He slept in a different room every night. Anyone who accidentally saw him was beheaded. When he traveled, he wore disguises. Only a handful of people knew his location at any time. And then, far from his palace, alone except for a minister and a few servants, he suddenly died. His body had to be smuggled back to the capital in a carriage trailed by a cart of salted fish to mask the smell. He died as isolated as it is possible for a human being to be, cut off from his wives, his family, his court, his people. And the empire he had built with such ruthless efficiency crumbled almost immediately after. The fortress mentality is seductive because it feels safe. But Greene argues it is one of the most dangerous positions you can adopt. When you isolate yourself, you cut off the flow of information. You cannot see threats forming. You cannot hear the rumors. You lose touch with the people whose loyalty you need most. And worst of all, you become a conspicuous, stationary target. Everyone knows exactly where you are and exactly how to get to you. The counterexample is Louis XIV of France, who did the exact opposite. He built Versailles not as a fortress but as a fishbowl. He kept every powerful noble close, organized their lives around his daily routines, and maintained constant visibility. Nothing happened in that palace without his knowledge. No conspiracy could form because there was no privacy in which to hatch one. The king was everywhere, and his enemies could never gather in the shadows. The lesson for your own life: when you feel threatened, resist the urge to withdraw. Move closer to people, not further away. Circulate. Stay connected. Information is your best defense, and information only flows when you are in contact with others. Isolation feels like armor, but it is actually a prison. Every law we have discussed so far comes with an invisible asterisk, and that asterisk says the effectiveness of any strategy depends entirely on who you are using it on. Law 19. Know who you are dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person. Greene is blunt about this. There are certain people who, if you misjudge them, will destroy you. Not because they are powerful in the conventional sense, but because something in their psychology makes them relentless, unforgiving, and disproportionately dangerous. He identifies 5 types you must learn to recognize. First, the arrogant and proud. These people have a hair-trigger sensitivity to any perceived slight. You might say something casual at a party, something you forget the next morning, but they never forget. Their pride has been wounded, and their reaction will be wildly out of proportion. Greene's advice is simple. If you sense an overactive pride, flee. Do not try to manage it, just leave. Second, the hopelessly insecure. Similar to the proud type, but less explosive and harder to spot. They will not attack you openly. They will nibble at you over months and years, undermining you in ways too small to notice individually but devastating in aggregate. Third, the suspicious. These people see betrayal everywhere. So how do you spot these types before it is too late? The answer is you watch their patterns. The suspicious are actually easier to deceive than you would think because their paranoia makes them predictable. But if you become the target of their suspicions, watch out. Fourth, and this is the most dangerous, the serpent with a long memory. This person shows no anger on the surface when you offend them. They are cold, calculating, patient. They will wait years for the right moment to strike. Greene warns, be doubly careful of this type, and if you realize you have hurt them, either remove them from your life completely or get them out of your sight. And finally, the plain, unassuming, and unintelligent. This type is not dangerous in the conventional sense. They will not plot revenge, but they are almost impossible to deceive or manipulate because they lack the imagination to take the bait. You will waste enormous time and energy trying to work them, achieving nothing. The most dramatic illustration comes from the story of Genghis Khan. In 1219, the Shah of Khwarezm, a man who saw himself as vastly superior to the unknown Mongol chieftain, insulted Khan's ambassadors, beheaded one, and sent the others back humiliated. The Shah saw Khan as a nuisance, a minor barbarian not worth taking seriously. Within 2 years, Khan had destroyed the Shah's empire, seized the great city of Samarkand, and become master of most of Asia. The Shah died in exile, a broken man. He had offended the wrong person. Never assume that someone who seems weaker or less important today will not be powerful tomorrow. The insult you throw casually today may be the grudge that fuels someone's rise against you for years to come. Law 20. Do not commit to anyone. This law is divided into 2 parts, and both of them challenge something we are taught from childhood, that loyalty and commitment are always virtues. Greene says not in the realm of power. The first part is about romantic and social commitment. Greene uses the brilliant example of Queen Elizabeth I, who for decades maintained her independence by refusing to marry despite enormous pressure from Parliament, her court, and all of Europe. Kings and princes from every nation courted her. She encouraged all of them, flirted outrageously, dangled the promise of marriage, but never committed. And that refusal was the secret engine of her power. As long as she remained unattached, every suitor kept trying. Every nation hoped it would be the one to win an alliance through marriage. The moment she chose one, she would have alienated all the others and become embroiled in their rivalries. By refusing to commit, she kept every option open and every player in Europe dancing to her tune. She understood something profound. The moment you commit, the magic is gone. You become predictable. People stop trying to win you over because they already have you or they have written you off. But the person who stays independent, who cannot quite be pinned down, maintains an almost gravitational pull. Others orbit around them, expending energy and attention just trying to gain their favor. The second part of the law addresses a different dimension. Do not get dragged into other people's fights. Greene's stunning example here is Isabella d'Este, ruler of the tiny Italian city-state of Mantua, In the late 15th and early 16th centuries, Italy was a battlefield. Venice, Florence, Rome, and Milan were constantly fighting, and hovering above them all were France and Spain, each eager to grab whatever they could. Mantua, trapped in the middle, should have been devoured, but Isabella navigated this nightmare with almost superhuman skill. When France invaded Milan, she befriended the French king, charming him at parties, wearing her most stunning dresses, while secretly maintaining ties to Milan's displaced ruler. When Cesare Borgia's armies swept through Italy, she sent him lavish gifts and flattery while quietly keeping his troops out of Mantua. When the Pope waged war on her own brother's kingdom, she had her husband fight half-heartedly for the Pope while secretly allowing French troops to pass through her territory to help her brother. For 40 years, through regime changes, invasions, and civil wars, Isabella kept tiny Mantua independent and thriving, while every other power around her rose and fell. She did it by refusing to commit fully to any side. She was charming and supportive to everyone, indispensable to many, and loyal ultimately only to herself and her people. The lesson: your autonomy is your most precious asset. Do not let compassion, loyalty, or the pressure of the moment suck you into someone else's fight. Stay above the fray. The longer you maintain your independence, the more valuable you become to everyone, because everyone wants the ally who has not yet chosen a side. Here is a law that might bruise your ego, but that is precisely why it works. Law 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark? Nothing is more intolerable to people than feeling less intelligent than the person they are dealing with. Intelligence is one of the ego's most sensitive pressure points. So if you can make others feel smarter than you, even just slightly, their guard drops completely. They relax. They stop watching for tricks. And that is when they are most vulnerable. The greatest example in this chapter involves what may be the most audacious con in American history. In 1872, two grizzled prospectors named Philip Arnold and John Slack appeared in San Francisco with a stunning claim. They had discovered a diamond mine in the American West. They showed gems to jewelers. They led mining experts to the site via a deliberately confusing route where real diamonds were dug from the ground. They acted exactly like what they appeared to be: rough, uneducated country boys who had stumbled into a fortune and were too naive to understand what they had found. The cream of American finance descended on them: Horace Greeley, General McClellan, even Baron Rothschild. These sophisticated men took one look at Arnold and Slack in their ill-fitting clothes, gawking at the big city sights, and thought these bumpkins are in over their heads. Easy pickings. What none of them realized was that Arnold and Slack had purchased cheap gems in Europe for $12,000, then salted the mine, planting the stones for the experts to find. The experts were real. The jewelers were real. Even Tiffany himself confirmed the gems were genuine, but the two rustic prospectors were running the entire operation from behind a mask of stupidity. The financiers invested a fortune. Arnold and Slack walked away with over $700,000, and because their sale of mining rights had been technically legitimate, no law had been broken. Arnold went home to Kentucky, opened a bank, and lived comfortably for the rest of his life. The reason the scam worked was not the planted diamonds or the fake mine. It was the mask. Arnold and Slack looked and acted so convincingly unintelligent that the sharpest financial minds of the era never suspected them. In the presence of apparent stupidity, smart people feel superior, and superiority makes you careless. The ancient Chinese called this masquerading as a swine to kill the tiger. The tiger sees easy prey and drops its guard. You do not have to run a diamond con to apply this. In negotiations, in meetings, in social situations, downplaying your intelligence, showing some strategic cluelessness, asking for help and advice, all of these make others feel important and comfortable. And comfortable people are far easier to influence. This might be the most counterintuitive law in the entire book. We are taught from childhood that surrender is weakness, that you should stand your ground, fight for your honor, never back down. Law 22. Use the surrender tactic. Transform weakness into power. Greene says that attitude will get you destroyed. When you are weaker than your opponent, when the odds are stacked against you, fighting for honor's sake is not bravery, it is vanity. And vanity in the face of superior force is a death sentence. The island of Melis learned this the hard way. In 416 BC, Athens sent an overwhelming military force to the tiny island and offered a simple choice: submit peacefully or be destroyed. The Melians refused. They insisted on their right to independence. They appealed to the gods, to justice, to fairness. They trusted that Sparta would come to their rescue. Sparta never came. Athens invaded, slaughtered every man of military age, and sold the women and children into slavery. The Melians died for their honor, and nobody remembered their honor. They are remembered only as a cautionary tale, people who chose principle over pragmatism and paid with their civilization. Now contrast that with the German playwright Bertolt Brecht. In 1947, at the height of the anti-communist panic in America, Brecht was called before a congressional committee investigating supposed subversive influences in Hollywood. Other writers who testified took a confrontational approach. They argued, they challenged the committee's authority, they went down swinging, and they were blacklisted for years. Brecht took a completely different approach. He wore a suit, he smoked a cigar. Having heard the committee chairman loved cigars, he answered questions politely, using an interpreter even though his English was perfectly adequate, which gave him time to craft deliberately ambiguous responses. When committee members read his revolutionary poems in English, he would have the interpreter retranslate them from German, and somehow the inflammatory content became harmless. The committee members were charmed. They thanked him. They offered to help him with immigration issues. The next day, Brecht flew to East Germany and resumed his revolutionary writing without missing a beat. That is the surrender tactic. Outwardly, yield. Inwardly, remain firm. By appearing to submit, you buy time, disarm suspicion, and preserve your freedom to act when the moment is right. The people who refuse to surrender, who make a dramatic stand, often achieve nothing but martyrdom. And martyrdom, Greene reminds us, serves no purpose because you are not around to enjoy it. The smart move is to survive, to wait, to come back when the balance of power has shifted. As an old Ethiopian proverb says, when the great lord passes, the wise peasant bows deeply and silently farts. In a world that celebrates multitasking and keeping your options open, Law 23 delivers a sharp corrective. Stop spreading yourself thin. Concentrate. Law 23. Concentrate your forces. Greene opens with the cautionary tale of the kingdom of Wu in ancient China. Wu was a growing power with a formidable military. Its leaders decided to expand by attacking the powerful Middle Kingdom to the north, a massive campaign that stretched their resources across vast distances. Meanwhile, Wu's chief minister warned that the barbarous state of Yue to the south was watching, waiting for exactly this kind of overextension. The king ignored him. The minister, sensing catastrophe, sent his own son away to safety, a clear signal of dissent. The king was so enraged by this that he ordered the minister to kill himself. The minister obeyed, but before he died, he cried out for the king to tear out his eyes and fix them to the city gate so he could watch the enemy march in. Within a few years, exactly as the minister had predicted, the enemy swept through the undefended south and destroyed the kingdom of Wu. The king killed himself in shame. The greatest military power in the region had been obliterated because it scattered its forces instead of concentrating them. Greene contrasts this with the Rothschild banking family. Starting from a single house in the Jewish ghetto of Frankfurt, the Rothschilds built the most powerful financial dynasty in European history. Their secret was concentration in every sense. The family patriarch attached himself to a single powerful client rather than spreading his services thin. He employed only family members. He refused to let outsiders into the business. When his 5 sons spread across Europe to London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt, they maintained iron discipline. All communications were in a private dialect written in code no outsider could decipher. They married within the family to prevent dilution of loyalty. Their wealth was never dispersed, never scattered to the winds. One arrow hitting one target is infinitely more effective than 5 arrows scattered to the wind. Find your richest mine and dig deep, rather than hopping from shallow mine to shallow mine. Identify your single most important goal and pour your energy into it with total intensity. As the legendary Casanova himself once wrote, "When a man devotes himself completely to a single goal, he must succeed, whatever the difficulties." Intensity defeats extensity every time. We have reached the final law of part 2. And in many ways, it is the capstone, the law that ties all the others together. Law 24. Play the perfect courtier. Throughout history, a court has always formed around the person in power, whether it is a king's palace, a corporate headquarters, or a social circle. And the people who thrive in these courts, the courtiers, have mastered a very specific set of skills. Not technical skills or intellectual talents, but something more subtle. The art of indirect power. Greene lays out the rules of the perfect courtier, and they read like a masterclass in social intelligence. First, avoid ostentation. The more you brag about your achievements, the more suspicion and envy you attract. Let others do the praising. Second, practice nonchalance. Your talent should seem to flow naturally. Nobody wants to see the sweat and effort behind your success. Make whatever you say or do appear uncontrived and effortless. Third, never criticize those above you directly. If you must advise a superior, make your criticism so indirect, so wrapped in suggestion that they feel they arrived at the correction themselves. Greene illustrates this with the architect Jules Mansart, who served Louis XIV. Mansart's technique was brilliant. He would deliberately include a small flaw in every design he presented to the king. Louis would spot the flaw and propose how to solve it, at which point Mansart would exclaim for all to hear that he would never have seen the problem that the king so masterfully found and solved. He would burst with admiration, confessing that next to the king he was but a lowly pupil. Louis loved this. He made Mansart the royal architect of Versailles. And Mansart never once had to argue, plead, or criticize. He simply let the king feel like the genius in the room. Other rules of courtship. Be frugal with flattery, because too much is suspicious. Never bear bad news if you can avoid it. Alter your style to fit the person you are dealing with. Be a source of pleasure. Master your emotions. Never joke about appearance or taste. And always make the master feel like the sun around which everything revolves. But Greene also includes a dramatic warning. He tells the story of Talleyrand playing a practical joke on Napoleon, arranging for a supposed boar hunt in a Paris park to actually involve 2 enormous pigs purchased from a local market. Napoleon, enraged and humiliated when he discovered the ruse, never fully trusted Talleyrand again. Months of carefully built trust were damaged by a single misjudged moment of humor. The lesson is clear. Courtship is a delicate game. Every move must be carefully calibrated. One misstep, one joke that lands wrong, one moment of carelessness, and years of careful positioning can evaporate. Never imagine that because the master laughs at your wit, you can say whatever you want. Never assume that favor is permanent. The perfect courtier never takes their position for granted. They remain eternally vigilant, reading the room at every moment, adjusting their behavior like a musician tuning an instrument, always listening for the slightest disharmony. Let us step back and pull together the most powerful lessons from these 12 laws. If you take nothing else from this video, take these. First, and this is the foundation of everything we covered today, never appeal to gratitude. People do not want to feel indebted to you. If you need something, frame it as a mutual benefit. Show others how helping you helps them. Self-interest is the only reliable currency in human relationships. Second, information is power. But the best intelligence comes not from espionage, but from conversation. Learn to listen deeply, suppress your own ego, and let others reveal themselves to you. Third, when you are outmatched, do not fight, surrender. Not because you are weak, but because survival is the prerequisite for everything else. Time is on your side if you stay alive. Fourth, unpredictability is one of your greatest assets. The moment you become predictable, you become controllable. Introduce strategic surprise into your behavior. Keep people guessing. Fifth, never isolate yourself, no matter how threatened you feel. Isolation looks like safety but functions like a trap. Stay connected. Circulate. The crowd is your shield. Sixth, your independence is sacred. Do not let emotion, obligation, or pressure drag you into commitments that serve someone else's agenda. Stay above the fray. The person who refuses to take sides ends up with the most options and the most power. And seventh, the overarching lesson of the perfect courtier. Power is not a blunt instrument. It is an art form. The most powerful people in history did not seize power through brute force. They attracted it through charm, subtlety, and an almost supernatural ability to read the people around them. Take a moment to sit with all of this. These are not just historical curiosities. These are the invisible dynamics playing out in your office, your family, your friendships every single day. The question is not whether the game of power exists. It does, and it always will. The question is whether you will be a conscious player or an unwitting pawn. In part 3, we will go even deeper into the laws of image, boldness, spectacle, and self-creation. Robert Greene will show you how the way the world sees you is something you can deliberately construct and control. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 12 laws hit you the hardest? Was it the idea that gratitude is a burden, not a bond? The power of strategic surrender? The dangerous art of courtiership? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. If you want to experience the full depth of this book, I have put links in the description to grab it on Amazon or listen free on Audible with a 30-day trial. And if you have not already, subscribe. I publish new deep dive book summaries every week, and part 3 of the 48 Laws of Power is coming soon. Remember, power is not about domination. It is about understanding. The more clearly you see the game, the more freely you can choose how to play it. I will see you in the next one.